Vanity and pride are different things, though the words are often used synonymously. Pride relates more to our opinion of ourselves, vanity to what we would have others think of us. On the 22nd of January 1879, the British Empire suffered a resounding defeat at the Battle of Isselawanda. Their foes, the Zulu Kingdom, a monarchy in southern Africa, ruled at the time by King Cetiswayo. The British infantrymen were armed with Martini Henry breech-loading rifles and supported by a formidable Hale rocket battery. The Zulus, on the other hand, were primarily equipped with assegai spears and shields made from cowhide. Yet the latter prevailed. How? Well, Chelmsford, who led the British forces, was so overconfident that he didn't order his troops to entrench at Isselawanda, nor did he form a laager around camp, which left them vulnerable to attack. He even divided his forces into two when searching for the main Zulu host, taking only 2,800 soldiers with him. He did so with confidence in the obvious superiority of British forces, one owed not just to their superior weaponry, but also to the alleged supremacy of their tactics. However, by overestimating his own strength, he ultimately underestimated that of the Zulus, who successfully outmaneuvered him as a result. The British superiority here was clearly, to a great extent, illusory. Illusory superiority is not just endemic to matters of strategy and war, of course. In fact, it is very well documented that people in various social settings and contexts falsely come to believe in their own superiority without much good reason. One such term for this pervasive phenomenon is the Lake Wobegon Effect, named after Garrison Keillor's fictional town, Lake Wobegon, a place where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average. In short, the Lake Wobegon Effect is the tendency for people to overestimate their own achievements and abilities. In 1976, for example, the United States College Board attached a survey to the SATs. One of the questions asked students to rate their ability to get on well with others relative to the median. Interestingly, 85% of students put themselves above the average, and 25% even rated themselves in the top percentile. Of course, something doesn't quite add up here. There's an evident distortion in the way the children perceive their own abilities in relation to others, which looks statistically anomalous. There are other studies, though, which have yielded similar findings. Svensson's 1981 survey of students in the US and Sweden, for instance, asked them to compare their driving skills to other people's. 93% of the US sample and 69% of the Swedish sample put themselves in the top 50%. And in Gilovich's later 1991 survey of 1 million high school students, only 2% stated that they were below average in their leadership ability. It's not just students who exhibit this. The University of Nebraska-Lincoln surveyed their teaching faculty in 1977, asking them to rate their pedagogical skills relative to the average. 94% rated themselves as above average teaching ability, with 68% going as far as to rate themselves in the top quartile. Again, the Lake Wobegon effect appears to be present, as the findings are radically disproportionate to the expected values. A worrying manifestation of the phenomenon, though, is related to matters of intelligence. This study, for instance, found that 65% of participants agreed with the statement, "I am more intelligent than the average person," with 20% choosing strongly agree and 45% choosing mostly agree. This relates to the associated Downing effect, a particular manifestation of the Lake Wobegon effect, which describes the tendency for people with a below-average IQ to overestimate their intelligence, and interestingly, for people with an above-average IQ to underestimate it. W.B. Yeats laments as such, "The best lack all conviction, whilst the worst are full of passionate intensity." C.L. Downing's holocultural studies into perceived intelligence, which the Downing effect is named after, uncovered an interesting trend. People of lower intelligence are less accurate at appraising the intelligence of others. This pattern is arguably what is responsible for the contemporary lack of belief in experts. People are less inclined to accept the conclusions of experts because they find it difficult to comprehend the extent of the expert's knowledge on the topic, whilst believing themselves appropriately knowledgeable. Krueger and Dunning's experiments reinforce such a conclusion. Their study involved assigning numerous puzzles for the participants to solve, such as grammar questions and problems in logic, and then asking them to appraise their performance relative to the average. All four groups rated themselves as above average at the tasks, even those who scored in the bottom quartile. The illusory superiority present shows that poor performers are not in a position to recognise the shortcomings in their performance, and accordingly struggle to appreciate the levels of competence and skill required for a task. This naturally leads to the rejection of experts, and the illusory belief in one's own achievements. The fool doth think he is wise, as Shakespeare's Touchstone would say. So we can see quite clearly with this case how the Lake Wobegon effect is quite damaging, but what other ways might it be a problem? Well, a big one is that it can stand in the way of much needed change. By definition, half the children in the United States are above the national average and half below it, writes Christopher Canal. But John Jacob Canal recently canvassed every state and did not find a single one that reported its elementary pupils were below average on any of the 6 major commercial tests. Odd, as expected, but why is this an issue? Well, due to the illusory excellence of each school, schools ended up competing with figures that didn't really exist. As a result, some teachers encouraged low ability students to be absent on test days, helped students take the test, and allowed outright cheating in order to match the spurious achievements of other schools. A similar problem occurred in China between 1957 to 1961, whereby the CCP reported inflated levels of grain production. This in turn motivated collectives to lie about their own grain production, which led to an illusory overabundance of grain and contributed to the Great Chinese Famine, which, suffice to say, wasn't great. Succinctly, the Lake Wobegon effect is bad because it diminishes or detracts away from genuine achievement. Doing so not only gives us a false idea as to how things are, but also causes problems when we try to take the standards it set seriously. A final problem caused by the Lake Wobegon effect can be found in medicine. Elderly people in particular, when faced with a terminal illness, are often unable to reconcile the grave reality of their illness, because they believe themselves above average in their ability to handle it and their chances of survival. For example, the general 5-year survival rate for illnesses such as pancreatic cancer are estimated around 10%, and yet physicians like J.H. and K.S. Wolfe report that most patients diagnosed with these illnesses are convinced that they will be in that 10% that survives, which of course statistically is sadly only the case for a few of them. Investigating the question of are all cancer patients above average, Dr. Thomas J. Smith finds that it is also the doctors themselves that succumb to the Lake Wobegon effect, being misleadingly optimistic when making predictions to their patients in turn. Once more, the danger of the Lake Wobegon effect here is apparent. If everyone overestimates one's status in terms of health, it can lead to some rather serious consequences. So, what can we do to avoid it? What even causes it? Well, there are a few explanations in answer to the latter. Egocentrism is a big one, the idea that we inherently believe ourselves to have an advantage over others. Another popular explanation is the better than average heuristic, which sees us identify a positive characteristic we have and then exaggerate it towards the ideal level we want to have. In some sense, though, the explanation doesn't matter. We can greatly reduce the risk of succumbing to the Lake Wobegon effect by being conscious of our shortcomings. The fool may think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool, as it were. As such, look to the experts. Try to understand what it is they know that we don't, and where possible, try to exercise as much humility as one can. With this, we are less likely to overestimate our own abilities, and as a result, will be better placed to recognise skill and achievement where we see it. As Ralph Waldo Emerson once poetically said, "A great man is always willing to be little." And I'm afraid that is the end of the video. Hopefully now you have a good understanding as to what the Lake Wobegon effect is, what it looks like, why it's bad, and hopefully how to avoid it. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, please show your support by liking it. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. It's free and a great way of helping more people see our content. Speaking of which, we are pleased to announce going forwards that after our brief autumn hiatus, there will now be at least one new video going up every 3 weeks, so do remember to hit that notification bell so that you know whenever we release new content. As always everyone, thank you for watching.